Hi, I'm IKEA, and for today's video, we're going to have a build showcase on one of the newer additions to the build collection, and that is a Highend Headhunter TechTank. It is a mouthful, but it is a hybrid of several things. Well, it's a high-end, it is a Headhunter-based build, and it's a tech tank. The tech tank part is not completely as with the other tech tanks, and also partially not truly a tech tank, but I'm still going to call it one. I get to, it's my build collection, I get to decide which ones do and don't get to be called tech tank. And that is because of the addition of this thing, the Ninjabike backpack, as this is the very first time I have ever used one on the build collection and has been on any build picture at all. And yeah, of course, we're going to use the build collection and specifically as well two build pictures from there. I'm going to, of course, be linking both of them down below. It's going to be one Ninjabike variant and one Memento variant of very similar builds, but they end up playing quite differently. So we're going to discuss them both. As always, with these build showcases, it's going to be timestamped so you can jump around. In the first chapter, we'll go over the builds themselves and go over their build pictures, and then go into a little bit of a spreadsheet about their damage, but just a small one, as we're just going to look at how much they do, not so much any DPS calculations, as that doesn't make any sense for headhunters. And then we're going to take it into some gameplay. Mostly I will be running around solo, as these are very much solo builds, but made for heroic 5 directives. And we're going to take it into several types of gameplay, and all of those will be timestamped down below so you can jump around if you wish to. So yeah, let's jump into the build. And here is the build we'll be discussing. Although, of course, as I alluded to, we're going to be discussing two builds. They're very similar, but one with a Memento, one with a Ninjabike. And also that might lead to some people going, wait, a Ninjabike? Really? Weren't we shitting on the Ninjabike always? Not always. And that is the thing that has come out with Zvia being added. We have gotten one more rifle damage bonus. For the longest of time, I've tried to actually make an tech tank-ish kind of build work with rifles, because rifles can, of course, use the shield. And that means that they could be tech tanked, basically. You could have Artificer plus the shield. Generally, with the tech tank, I also consider the Memento kind of core to them. But in this case, there is a reason to go without the Memento, but there's also definitely a reason to go with the Memento. So this is the Memento variant. Here we have, in effect, Zvia, 2 pieces of it, one being the Eagle's Grasp, and then a chest. All of these with headshot weapon handling, as we'll see in the build picture a little bit clearer in a second. And then a Fox's Prayer. And then also another piece of Overlord for the Ninjabike variant. And then a Picaros. Of course, with the Ninjabike backpack, we get 3-piece Svea, which is the magazine size, the rifle damage, and then 30% weapon handling. Incidentally, as well, along the way, with the Eagle's Grasp, we're getting another 15 weapon handling. With the 2-piece Overlord, we're getting the 3-piece bonuses, which is then 10 rifle damage, 30% accuracy, and then another 30% weapon handling. Because, of course, in here, then, we're not really making use of that 10% skill haste, but that skill tier is core to this. And, of course, we're having a blue core here and still keeping our red core. Because it is a headhunter. At the end of the day, it needs to be able to kill and then trigger headhunter and then keep it going, especially as well. And that is what this build barely does. We'll go into its numbers a little bit later on. In this setup, it can just barely kill a red to start out with. Now, you might ask yourself, why would you limit yourself to that? And that's going for both of the versions, with the Memento and the Ninjabike version. And the reason for that is actually the skills we get here. So I have a 5-tier shield, which with the Ninjabike variant, which can't, of course, charge up, is a 4.1 million. With the Memento variant, this is a 5-point-something million. We have an Artificer, a 3-tier Artificer, with Technician here, of course, as well, being one of those tiers for both of them. And this is giving us a 44% skill repair. Every 10 seconds, we're healing 44% of this 4.1 million, or even more so with the Memento, because, of course, that has skill efficiency. The version differences between them as well is actually very minimal. So one of the things with this is actually if you set up the Ninjabike variant and you set it up kind of like this with, well, you don't really have any, even if the Zvia or the Overlord were swapped around, going to the Memento version, because this is actually character 2 that has the Memento version on the build collection, it's swapping from a Memento or from a Ninjabike to a Memento, of course, keeping the headshot mod in there. And then this piece actually swaps to a Brazos, because we need that 2-piece Brazos for that skill tier. That skill tier is kind of core to it. So what we're doing here, of course, is we are kind of losing that third piece bonuses from Zvia. We're kind of losing that accuracy and weapon handling from that we would get from 2-piece and 3-piece Overlord. We're keeping the 2-piece Brazos for the skill tier. And that skill is kind of in there. But now, of course, we have lost a lot of that weapon handling, but we've gained the Memento. Both of these versions as well, with the Memento uncharged versus the Ninjabike, of course, do the same damage. Because if the Ninjabike isn't charged up yet, it has no bonuses. The Ninjabike has no bonuses. Of course, the brand bonuses that we get from the Ninjabike, all of them are not damage related. They are all weapon handling related in this case. So actually, if we go back to the Ninjabike version, so you might think, okay, that sounds pretty decent. Why would you actually have a Ninjabike variant? And the reason for that is these silly stats that we get over here. 121% reload, 31% accuracy, and 101% stability. We also get 91% weapon swap speed, but we don't care about that. And this is, of course, you do have to have a full watch. These are numbers with the full watch, but having 120% reload speed, as you can imagine, makes for quite the effect on an 1886, which its biggest issues are weapon handling related. So if we're going to reload it for ourselves, which we're going to do with both builds, there is definitely some value to having all of this weapon handling and then giving up all the benefits we would have from a Memento. That's why I think there is value to this Ninjabike variant and why I have both versions in the build collection. And let's go look at their build pictures. And here we are with the build picture. In this case, with 5.08 as on the build collection, the Ninjabike variant first. And yeah, this is actually the very first build with the Ninjabike on the build collection. I, to this point, have not found a really usable place on PvE end for the Ninjabike, as that is mostly what the build collection is about. I'm mostly a PvE player. On the PvE end, it really doesn't make much sense in many a case. On the PvP end, I could see it a little bit more, especially because of this blue and yellow. That also was my concerns with this, with another version that I was okay with, but also didn't really like, which is to try to get MMRs to work with it. We have a ton of good bonuses, and even one more now, even with Breaking Point having come in. 4 MMRs, and then the Ninjabike. Now, finally, as well, with the introduction of Zwiadowka, as I'm likely butchering that word, which means scout in Polish. This gear set has come in, and this brand set has come in. And this brand has, on its first piece, 15% magazine size, 20% rifle damage on its second piece, and then also 30% weapon handling on its third piece. That 30% weapon handling is also shared with Overlord, as we already had that. That can have so much impact, as of course the main weapon we'll be using here just for its base damage. We can't really go with anything below this, and we'll see that in the numbers as well as we start using it and at the range in a second. We need an 1886, especially if we're trying to use Determined, and of course the opinions are very split on Determined. In this case as well, there is a good alternative, or even using an 1886 without Determined. But the way I'm going to show it mostly today, it is for a farming build, just mostly solo, especially activities. It isn't great for control points. It isn't great for bounties. It is pretty good at control points, and it is it is pretty good at activities. And that is mostly down to its damage potential and how high it can go with that. In this case, we needed that bonus from Zvia to come in. to make this possible. This would not have been possible beforehand. In the setup as well, you see that it is a little bit different than the one I showed in-game, although that difference is meaningless, as I've on the build picture, as this is actually being on character 5, being on my second account, it is the Overlord and is on the chest instead of Zvia, and the mask is the Zvia instead of the Overlord. Swapping those two places around doesn't really make a difference, except for one place, which we'll discuss a little bit later. And then, yeah, everything is headshot aligned. All the mods are headshot. And then we only really have the mask and the chest to put weapon handling extra in. Well, we have a ton of weapon handling. There isn't really a different stat that two of them would be useful. So we could put some repair skill in, maybe run a drone. We could put in, maybe even armor regen or something. I think just stacking up that weapon handling up the wazoo works out perfectly fine, because we do have defenses in other forms. And yeah, in this setup, it is basically always this. You do want to have an Eagle's Grasp, a Fox's Prayer, a Picaro's, and then these two pieces are interchangeable where the Zvia and the Overlord goes, especially for this variant. Then, of course, Technician on the specialization. Both of these are tech tanks in essence, even though I'm still not completely sold on calling a build with a Ninjabike a tech tank, but especially definitely the Memento one is a tech tank. Let's go look at that one. Not much changed, as we showed in game as well. The Brazos piece came in. Here, I would recommend having the Zvia, the two Zvia pieces being the Eagle's Grasp, because that, of course, is a name piece, needs to be the gloves. And then the chest being the Zvia piece as well. Zvia is a red core brand set, meaning that it isn't hard to farm it for a chest, especially with the talent as well. And yeah, it's, for instance, here I found one pretty easily. I had to optimize it, of course, but free talentable, and it wasn't too hard of a grind, because it basically is not a unicorn, because the core is the same. That doesn't hold true for the Brazos piece if you're going with the Memento variant here and want to try out the Memento variant. The Brazos piece is best put in this mask slot, so you don't have to deal with the talent alongside of it. You just need to find a piece which has headshot and weapon handling. It will come with a blue core. You can flip that blue core to a red. You do want this to be mostly red like this. The Picaros, of course, can't be. The Picaros already has a weapon damage. The core is basically a minor. Keeping the armor here is very beneficial. And yeah, all of them alongside of their special stats, because we have three pieces here with special stats, we're taking headshot alongside of them. And here we see actually the numbers as well for the shield and the Artificer for when the Memento is fully charged up. Of course, once the Memento is also fully charged up, this version actually does a little bit more, because we're getting some more weapon damage from the long-term buff. And one important part of this one as well is grading on the weapon. So in testing, if you want to go with either versions of these without putting more damage into some slot, because there are other options to put out more damage, but they would all affect the shield negatively. So for instance, if we go back to the Ninjabike version, we could of course opt to leave out the Picaros for a breaking point, getting more rifle damage, because that would give us the two-piece Picaros with the Ninjabike, which would be 25 rifle damage. We would lose one stat. We would keep the core. We would lose one stat, but that's okay, because we could still keep weapon damage plus headshot. We'd lose this armor core, and we would lose the two-piece bonus from Brazos. That would lose you 2 tiers on the shield, 1 tier on the Artificer. That is actually a pretty big loss. And the tankiness of this build is actually what I really enjoy. It is tanky enough and also can kill enough. One other option we have as well is to actually go with Chain Killer, which is actually an option here with the Ninjabike variant. I wouldn't say it is an option with the Memento variant. If you don't have high grading, and you don't need a really high grading, later on we'll see a grade 10 variant, and the grade 10 is enough for getting through everything. But you need that grade at least there a little bit. You can go with grade 5 and put a chain killer in here. You're giving up that 30% weapon handling. It doesn't matter which piece, if it's replacing Svea or the second piece Overlord, because both of them have the same bonus as the third piece, which is 30% weapon handling. You're giving up 30% weapon handling for just 5 more weapon damage, which could be offset with just 5 grading. But you need this weapon to be maxed out and also graded. And that's kind of the actual downside of this. This isn't a very new player-friendly build. This isn't for the newer player. You need to have your watch as well. Mostly maxed out. You need definitely the weapon damage and the headshot from it to make this work. Usually you want to get crit chance first for general play. So you need to be like 750 to have those at least filled in. You can, of course, offset that with grading if you didn't have that, but also if you're a newer player and you don't have the watch points, you likely don't have grade 25 to offset that with. But you definitely need a little bit of grading, either 5 with a chain killer or 10 with this setup. And I would recommend the 10 with this setup because leaving out the chain killer is perfectly fine as long as you have 10. And 30% more weapon handling when you're dealing with the 1886, which is a pretty annoying weapon to use, is really nice. As we see that option here as well, if you want to go for a little bit more damage, we can go even with the contractors. But honestly, after trying this out, these two are definitely not needed, especially with a little bit of grading. Yeah, you do need to have your watch maxed out. You need to have a little bit of grading. So this isn't very new player friendly, which is just sad to say, but you need to know that. And there are other builds for those, as you can go just the normal hotshot or anything else. Yeah, let's move on to a small part of the numbers, and we'll see what it hits for in there. And this is a little spreadsheet just for the damages. I just wanted to collate their damages. These are also always on the build pictures. They are actually in the bottom corner. They're actually next to right there. Although, of course, I can bring the red circle here. Generally, I put the damage numbers of whatever weapon is based on there. So we are just taking those in this case and taking them over to a little spreadsheet. And on top of here, as you may have seen these before, as I use them to compare, especially Headhunter builds on their first shot, their second shot, and their cap shot, and also what their base weapon damage is just between weapons and stuff. We've used this a bunch of times. Up here, I have just a few of the old regulars, which is, for instance, Hotshot with Chainkiller Araldi, Hotshot with Two-Piece Habsburg, Breaking Point as the new addition with Chainkiller Overlord, and that's with the Diamondback and the 1886 on different modes. All of them have a ton of damage, and then on their second shots, all of them can kill an elite, because all of them can, and then most of them can deal with a named. For instance, the Two-Piece Habsburg here is doing 9.9 million. If we go onto the second set, we have the Ninjabike and we have the Memento variant with the Memento at 0 and 30 stacks, and we have their numbers here. Although it should be said, this is being on different accounts. The 1886 on the Ninjabike version is grade 20. On the main account, I have it is grade 25 because I have a little bit more resources there. And all of the numbers are pretty low, but much more importantly, they hit a certain threshold. So there are several thresholds that exist for especially solo players, and that is that at just under 3 million, it is you can kill a red with one shot. At just under 6.5 million, you can one-shot a purple. And at 10 million, you can one-shot an elite. Now, that's mostly the grenadiers and the assaulters. Of course, snipers and rushers have less, and then LMGs have more. And then you have stuff like warhounds and heavies that are different. They don't per se have. But those are some of the baselines, and that is exactly what we kind of reach here. And that's why I feel this build now works. where beforehand we didn't have Zvia, so I had actually tried similar things to this, trying to put Chain Killer and then, for instance, Providence for the headshot, trying to put Contractors otherwise, mixing that with the Memento style one that we had basically. That did not work out well because the second shot especially would always be quite a bit below, and even that is with the Chain Killer. Now in this case actually with Zvia coming in, even when we're going Headhunter with that, just because of the much more higher weapon damage, on the first shot, both of them, and this is the Memento without any stacking because that was important to me that it could do that. On the first shot can kill a red. On the second shot, it can kill a red or a purple. And then on the third shot and onward, so this is the cap shot. It has actually 4 shots in total. If we can scroll over here, because they don't have a Chain Killer to maximize out quicker. But even on all of them, on the third shot, which isn't in here because we're mostly looking at the first shot, the second shot, and the cap shot. The third shot is on all of these more than enough to kill an elite. And so is the fourth shot and onwards. So you have to hit a red on the first one, you have to hit a red or a purple on the second one, and they need to not be LMGs, basically. And then on the third one and onward, you can start hitting elites, but actually not the LMG elites yet. And then on the cap shot, you can actually kill the LMG elites. That is a mouthful to say that these barely work. These are at the edge of what works. But we are, as I have often said, and has often been repeated, damage is king. Sometimes it is very nice, especially if you're using as well the Chain Killer or trying to use a Headhunter in groups, for instance. You just need a ton of damage. For instance, here the Chain Killer with Headhunter with the Hotshot pre-stacked. Yeah, we're going into the 30 million territory. The 2-piece Habsburg, of course, even higher. If we had the Model 700 numbers here, even it would be even higher. And that is very nice as a redundancy. You're basically going, I'll just hit as hard as I can, because then as well, on the second shot, you can kill a name with some of these. This one is a very different ideology. So what we're going for is a shield, the TechTank style, a shield that is strong enough that we can point towards the enemy, and then enough damage behind it that we can actually push forward. So these ones, yeah, they have some limitations, but then they have some benefits. It's okay to give up damage, but you have to give, whenever damage is king at the end of the day. If you're giving up damage, it better be for a damn good reason. And I think with these setups, I feel there is a damn good reason. Yeah, let's go reintroduce ourselves to the Memento variant. We'll take that out first, and we'll go do some activities, as that's mostly what today's build showcase will be. These are very much just made for activities, not even as well control points or bounties, as, yeah, that capped shot is not enough to kill a named if you're fighting 3 names in a heroic bounty. This can feel a little bit clunky, and control point force, this can feel a little bit clunky. But for activities and also 5 directives, because we don't care about many of the directives that are available, and especially this season, for the entirety of the season, we have 5 directives that align perfectly well with this. We'll discuss that in the gameplay. Let's go reintroduce ourselves to the Memento variant. And first off, we're going to take out the Memento variant. As we discussed, the Memento variant has the Memento buffs and then has quite a lot lower weapon handling, but not none. It still has 60 reload speed. It, in effect, has half of the other one, basically. It has 60 instead of 120. It has 41 accuracy instead of 130 accuracy, and then 41 stability instead of 101 stability. One thing I want to discuss here as well, the weapon, on the weapon, we have an option actually for a little bit more damage, which you can also do with the Chain Killer one. Although that doesn't work out, because then still the second shot, if you're going with a 0 graded weapon on the first shot, and you are still going Chain Killer on the Ninjabike variant, especially because that wouldn't work out with this variant. If we take out this Via, we're losing much more than we would gain. But on the Ninjabike version, you can. That extra 5 headshot would actually not make a difference enough for the second shot. It would help you kill on the first shot, but not on the second shot. So we are taking reload speed here on the mod as well. And of course, The other option to use here is Diamondback, but of course we could also put in, for instance, a Scorpio here for if we get ourselves into some trouble and we want to get ourselves just out of it without per se killing, but just, you know, we just need this person kind of out of our way for a second. A Scorpio, of course, is a really good panic button. Skill-wise as well, we're using a Crusader Shield, Shield Health on the mods, and then Horse Regeneration here, but we're not really using it as for regeneration on there. But having more Shield Health is beneficial because this increases the amount that we have here, not by much, by a little amount, but our healing from the Artificer is based on percentage. It isn't a flat value as it would be, for instance, for a Healing Hive or something. This is a percentage value, so we want the shield to be as powerful as it can be. Now in here, of course, yeah, we're reaching 5 skill tiers, as actually it's showing there 6, and that was confusing me for a second. But of course, I have a TDI card custom as the third piece. Not so much for any real reason. I just wanted something to sledge with if I get the opportunity. If we're not holding the TDI card custom, as was confusing me, we have 5 skill tiers and we have 4.1 million here. This will also go up by the skill efficiency, because the skill efficiency, of course, is adding into also skill health and also skill haste, which helps a lot. I'm going to run the 5 directives of the season. There is a global event available, but we're not going to be using that, of course. Let's go into some combat, and let's go do that indeed. I'm taking out here the Memento variant, of course. It is not charged up yet. We're going to use Determined, of course, as our main ability to keep kills going. And that's really all you need for a Determined Headhunter, is enough killing power that you can keep Determined up. Determined, if you haven't used it yet, whenever you kill with a headshot, as long as you have gotten a headshot kill, the next shot will act as if it is a headshot. So in this case, if I'm going to kill this purple with a headshot, as I'm trying to, although actually I'm going to fall back and be a little bit smarter, as I already died once, but in my defense it was through 3 snipers, one of them being named, as I ran into a name group. So we can't kill a purple right away, and we can't kill a elite right away either, but we can of course just sit in front of them. We have a really powerful shield. Now that I have Determined, if I were to shoot this elite, for instance, I would actually lose Determined. It would actually act as if it was a headshot, but it wouldn't kill. So to chain it, you kind of need to have a Headhunter up. But now that we have gotten 2 kills, we can go with all of the elites that we want. And we want that elite, we want preferably that elite, but I can't see them barely. So they've definitely change the contrast of the game. If you haven't been in Coney yet this season, I would highly recommend it, as one of our hostages there is getting a nice warm hug, because hostages never want to stay alive, and yeah, they that fried their brain. Of course, yeah, the defense wave came from that side, or has it? I'm very confused where they are. Or have we actually killed everybody from it? Likely not. This was maybe from a random patrol. And likely our hostage is in combat with... Oh no, our hostage is in combat with the entirety of the defense wave. There we go. Let's keep one of them alive. Let's get at least a little bit of a reward. But yeah, Determined and Headhunter together is a very potent combination. Some people, of course, consider it akin to cheating, to that effect almost. Some people are not happy with it, but they're like, you know, it's okay. And I kind of am in that camp. I'm not super happy with it. I honestly would not be against it being turned into the way that perfect Determined works, which is that it saves basically one shot. So again, headshot, body shot, headshot, body shot. Here we can headshot, body shot, body shot, body shot, body shot, which is a little bit cheesy, but it's also part of the game. To me, if the tool exists and isn't, it's, for instance, of course, this could be construed to say, for instance, as well, the Feilau or something, or something like Anderson exists, so it's okay to use it. It depends on the degree of what you need to do to it. That's it for me, that the defining factor. For this, we just put Determined on a weapon and we just run it. And you still need to, you can still die, as we see in the map there. I totally died there, so you know it's not like it is invincibility or something. And here I forgot to reload. We're gonna take the full reload, and that's the nice thing about the shield. I have enough staying potential, staying alive potential behind it that I can just sit there and reload in front of 3 enemies. I shouldn't do it in front of the 6-7 enemies that are over there, of course, but... And yeah, at this point we do have Headhunter. I'm actually gonna wait here a second. It might cost our friend's life. I'm gonna also drop Determined there. Or what I might do actually, yeah, let's take out one of the elites. So we have these reds, and while I have the Memento now with a few charges, actually from the start we could have killed an red. So here again, red, follow up with a red, because that is actually the important part of this. We have to be conscious about who you're killing first and second.
Incoming hostiles detected.
And we just have barely enough. You do need that grading on the weapon, especially if you're doing it on the Memento version, where there isn't really an option. On the Ninjabike version, yeah, you can swap one of the either the Zria pieces or one of the Overlord pieces, basically the chest or a mask, depending on which one you have. It needs to become the chest, of course, it's a chain killer. But that can get you the effect of 5 grading, basically. So you're getting 5 weapon damage. Weapon damage and expertise grades, they're in the same pool. They're both all weapon damage. They're actually the same stat. And then, of course, the specific weapon damage, in this case, rifle damage, goes into that same pool as well. So that can make up for a little bit of grading. But honestly, grade 10... I feel is in the realm of reason for everybody. And yeah, the effect of this as well, once we get it a little bit charged up, so here I'm not fully charged up on the Memento yet, but we're getting there. And if you don't know where that is the 5th icon on the right there. It is a little arm. It becomes the 4th now, of course. The inner part of it is actually the cooldown till when you lose the buff. So every time I pick it up, it extends it to 5 minutes, 300 seconds. And the lower bar underneath it that is filling up is every time I pick up one of the pill confirms, one of the mementos, then we're charging up a long buff, up to 30 of them. And that is constantly refreshing. So even once you have it filled up, as long as you don't lose it to a death or to the timer, it'll just be there. It'll just be there and counting down. I like this zone a lot, especially if you have the year 1 bundle or have the classifieds through other means, although I believe that's basically just ultimate and the year 1 bundle. It might be worth getting them for specifically this zone, for instance. There is so many... well, these two adding to, especially for instance for this one, I would go to this classified, but especially this classified up here, this zone, this place fills up quite often. And this, of course, is mostly done for XP. So if you're doing activities, that is mostly for XP, but sometimes, of course, if the zone is good, it might be worth going there. We'll go after some other factions in a little bit. We'll give up Determined for that, actually, because I feel that works better without. And then, yeah, actually, to ram it home again, yeah, red, purple. Although we could have killed an elite rusher with the second shot, as long as it's not an elite something else. And then from that point on, it doesn't matter what we're hitting. And yeah, as you can imagine, when you have that potential, and especially in this case with build that also has an out, because that's part of my build philosophy always is you don't build for the easy times. I don't just have builds. That's why I like TechTanks, for instance. They're not made for the easy times, although a lot of the times are easy, of course. They're made for the hard times. So if I run into enemies, for instance here, I lost my shield to a rusher, I wasn't paying attention. I still have 3% regen. You can see my health regenning up quite fast. Now, of course, that's dependent on
Manual
the
override required.
Norwegian directive not being part of that season. But for instance, for this season, the 5 directives that we have, none of them really are an issue for this build. So starting off, let's go through them actually for this season. The low ammo one, rifles actually have a ton of ammo. So actually, if we look at our, we'll go to the Diamondback, we have 139 ammos in reserve. But actually, every time we open this box, I'm getting 273 ammo. So that does require, of course, you to have a full watch and such. But yeah, that is a lot. So that is more than enough to run around for quite a while, especially seeing as we're just expending. I was gonna say 1 shot per kill, but that's not true. Close to 1 shot per kill. And we're not eating up ammo fast. The cool skills, actually, the Artificer Hive, when it is on your back, it is healing your shield. That's also important actually to say, as you don't need to deploy it. It needs to just be on your back. You just need to have it. And as you can see there, once in a while, a purple kind of hue happens behind me, and that's my shield getting healed. There's also a timer on your buff bar for your shield and you being affected by it. So when I pull it out, that first one on the buff bar, that is looks like the Artificer and is counting down. That is me having a buff on something of mine, which is in this case a shield. And that will do it if it does or doesn't have charges as well. So cool skills really doesn't do anything against it. All cool skills does is just take away the charges, so you can't deploy it or something, and you wouldn't want to deploy it because that would put your shield on cooldown. For others, for instance, you could actually use it for others as long as they're using handheld skills. So for instance, with the Eclipse running around with a Fire Sticky or a Fire Chem, or even Oxy players, whenever they pull it out, it does send a charge their way to buff them. Then, of course, the other ones being Fog of War. We don't really have anything for Fog of War, so we don't have Pulse and such, and you don't want to run Pulse, for instance, for this, which is actually nice, for instance, with the Hot Shot, with control points. You generally use the Recon Drone. That is a really powerful tool. This can't have that, but that's as big, that we just have to deal with that. Fragile Armor, we shouldn't armor break much. That's a big shouldn't as well, of course, because here and there we will. But this build is very much designed to have the shield towards the enemy and not yourself. And Ragers is just more damage. So Ragers, if we had to deal with a red, for instance, that for some reason is Rager, we don't have a stack prepared, it can get in the way for 1 shot, but then you just have to 2-shot. Usually that means as well that you've lost your stack for some reason. As long as you have your stacks, most of the elite enemies, especially with the amounts that we have, even an elite LMG with Ragers, with the cap shot that we have, is enough to kill them. Here we'll continue on murdering some here, and yeah, this is actually, of course, a gameplay style that a lot of us do, just running from activity to activity. Generally, I prefer doing this in groups, mostly in groups as well. You get a little bit more security just from the group. You can actually go faster because, for instance, for this, if we were with a 2-man or even especially a 3-man, there is only 2 spawn doors here. One of us would go to each spawn door, and each of us can kind of deal with a spawn door. That's usually how we're set up. And one person could even stay back here so that whenever the key gets picked up or the completion needs to be done, they're already there to push it, and they can shoot from here to help. So generally in groups, you're better off, but of course, groups aren't always available. Also, I'm not always in the mood to play with others, so I do like having solo builds. And honestly, this one, this and its sister build, especially the Ninjabike version, as we'll go into that in a little bit, both of them have quickly become my activities build. I still wouldn't take them, for instance, for bounties. I still wouldn't take them for control points or such. I wouldn't take them for groups, where, for instance, something like a Regulus Headhunter, I'm totally fine with groups and generally use them in groups, for instance, as well. This isn't that, but not all builds need to be all things, and this one is very specialized for this. So we're just roaming the zone. We're going to get this territory control. This will be our last one on this Memento one. Actually here as well, I'm going to let them shoot me and kind of get through my shield and see kind of... Hopefully there's an LMG here and we'll have a tickle fight. And I can explain what that is with the 4 tech tanks. But here also with the Memento now charged up, as we saw on the build picture, this is repairing for 56% of the of whatever it's healing. So in this case, the shield, and this 5.3 million. So at the very least, we have more than 50% of 5 million. So let's call it like 2.8-ish million-ish. Just quick math, ballpark numbers. We can lose that every 10 seconds. Of course, something like SHT Exposed can cause extra incoming damage. Something like Golden Bullet as well can cause severe incoming damage. But generally, that does mean that I do get to stand in front of enemies for quite a bit. You still should play it smart. So, for instance, I should still place myself in positions where I am not completely exposed to everybody, but I can be if I want to be or need to be, because for instance, if I need to take the reload, this one does reload a lot slower than we saw with the Ninjabike variant. That is actually very much one of the benefits of that one. And with the ammo one, whenever we're hitting reload, so I had 4 rounds there, I will always reload from 0 in the same way that shotguns do. That is just the directive. That's just how the directive is set up. I'm going to actually leave this LMG person alive. Also, I'm going to say, run out of here, doggy. Almost. But yeah, with a red hotshot or red build, yeah, you can't stand in front of them for this long. Also, I was just hoping for a charge to come, but it was just a second too late. I was going to mock him with my shield recharging. But of course, we also have the skill efficiency, so the shield is back in seconds. Like, that is the cooldown of the shield. It is being reduced to being 13 seconds by the skill efficiency here. And also we have a skill haste here, which that doesn't make that big of a difference. And the shield is then back. The Memento version has a much stronger shield because of the Memento and also us having regen, and also actually the pickups, of course, they provide us with bonus armor. We do have 2 blue cores adding to that, where a full tech tank would have 4. So whenever you pick up a pickup from that, you get a much larger blue bar. Here it isn't that big, but especially if you're running over a few of them and then trying to face tank an enemy, you basically can, because you do have a ton of extra one. And then of course you pull out your shield just to protect yourself. Let's go and reintroduce ourselves to the Ninjabike variant, and we'll have a look at that one. And here we are with the actual Ninjabike variant on the character that it actually is on, also on the build collection. I'm on my second account, that's why my SHG dropped, and also why suddenly a sudden underscore has appeared there. On this build, as I generally don't want to have the same build twice, I went actually with the Ninjabike. Although I started out with the Ninjabike, I was expecting actually the Memento to not have enough damage, because actually on this variant as well, at first I thought I would need the Chain Killer. That turned out to be not true, as Zvia was basically enough by itself, and that led to this setup with 2-piece Overlord and then 2-piece Zvia, and then we're taking the names, of course, from the Zvia, and being the Eagle's Grasp, and then the Fox's Prayer from Overlord, and pairing that as well with 1 piece of Brazos, in this case the Picaro's holster specifically because of that weapon damage and armor. And suddenly the Ninjabike kind of made sense. And also this build versus the other one, while the other one has actually a little bit of a tankier shield, it isn't a meaningful difference for the shield. It does also have a regen, of course. It also has skill efficiency, which helps a little bit with all things. But the Ninjabike variant has incessant amounts of weapon handling. And yeah, here we have 121% reload speed. That does make a difference, especially for the weapon we're using here. I've actually here grabbed first and grade 0, 1886, still maxed out. That is the thing with this build and the other one as well. You do need all of the stats to be maxed out. This is, again, not a very new player-friendly build. You need everything maxed out. especially something like the chest like this, you're not going to have it become maxed out and Headhunter. You need to optimize a little bit. At least the Eagle's Grasp and the Fox's Prayer and the Brazos, you can kind of get maxed out if you farm long enough for them. I'm pairing it here as well, actually, with the Nemesis. Now, you wouldn't want to use anything outside of rifles, per se, but the Nemesis, of course, by itself has an amount of damage that it is going to be more than enough for red, especially charged up. So what you could do, for instance, is kill with the Nemesis and then swap over. But I just want to actually show first that with, again, as well, with the reload speed mag in here, because we could put headshot there, with a grade 0, we can't actually one-shot a red. Let's take this up against a few more enemies here. And here we are in West Potomac Park, which is also a really good zone, as we can go after some Black Tusk, of course. I'm just going to wait until this charge wears off, although they're about to go underneath the turrets, because actually the tidal basin turrets are active, and they can actually harm you. We do have a red here, and yeah, as I showed before, I have a grade 0 weapon. So in this case, if I'm gonna shoot this guy in the face, I'm hoping that as I did get assaulted by a hoarder, just gonna give it a second more. But yeah, we're gonna leave him basically at his health gate. That guy is as close to death as he can be without being dead. That's why you need at least 5 grading basically for this. 5 grades, of course, isn't particularly hard to get. Oh, we're getting shot from the side here, which is super annoying. They can shoot through this. So can I, then, likely, but they found the hole earlier than I did. As there is also a True Sons running around here.
Retrieve the antivirals before Black Tusk can move them somewhere safer. Head down into the
I'm gonna shoot the Warhound. That is, of course, gonna eat my Headhunter, but actually, I'm gonna get my Determined back when it dies. There died instantly, so that's not. Oh no, we're coming from that side. That mark is just Manny being silly.
Got a man down.
Oh, actually, I did keep my head on there. That's interesting. And here, without grading, we're also capping out at 30 million. So also, one other issue would be, is if I kill an red, the second shot would not be enough for a purple. We'll scroll up in a second. We see these guys coming up. I'm just gonna murder them real quick. And this is, of course, the power of a build like this, that once it gets going, it is actually pretty powerful. And of course, here we have a shield to hide behind, and I don't really have to power away. And yeah, you saw there as well, one of the main features of this, as we were talking about, having a really high reload speed, basically. What that means, in effect, is when we are reloading, look at how fast this thing goes. This is an always-on fast hands. In effect, ARs will have an average of 120 reload speed from fast hands, because they, of course, don't fill up fast hands all the way. But on average, they'll have around 120 reload speed from that. And yeah, we have that effect here as well. There's an always-on reload speed, and of course, the handling and becoming stability and accuracy as well. We also have it as weapon swap speed, making for a really quick swap, even to the specialization weapon, as yeah, they have fixed swap speed. That was one of the things that did get fixed with Project Resolve when it first came in last season. Let's go actually hit over here, and here's one of the things actually why I do like the Ninjabike version, for both its effect of having much more weapon handling than the Memento one can have, but of course the Memento one has its benefits. One thing we can do as well, what we can't really or generally choose not to do with the Memento one, is fast travel to safe houses. Whenever you enter a shared area, so that is any area where you see other players or could see other players if they were around, you would lose your memento stack. So there are safe places to go even for refill. So actually, if you fast travel to the White House and don't go into the shared space, or actually go to the campus or theater, you don't actually lose, for instance, when Pistolero was active, your ammo and such, and you do get refilled. But not lose your memento stacks. But here we have the ability to go anywhere, and that is actually quite nice. As somebody that generally, especially in other times as well, would farm with a tech tank with Memento on the back, especially solo. Not having that anymore, not having to deal with losing all my Memento stacks and feeling a lot weaker. Yeah. And yeah, here we see the effect of this, and this shouldn't be surprising. Once you kind of see the numbers of it, it should fall into place what this build can do. Here I'm also actually still doing it with a grade 0 weapon, so there the red I was shooting at was weakened a little bit, or was a rusher. I didn't pay attention there, but we got them in one kill, one shot anyway. Here I'm swapping to a grade 20. That is the max one that I have on this account as a 1886. But you don't need that high anyway. You can get by with 5 and chain killer. You could likely even get by with 5 and having everything maxed out. But definitely with 10, you can forego the chain killer, because of course in here I could put a chain killer. This would replace, although actually I don't have a chain killer on this character because they run Habsburg as their hotshot setup. I could put in a chain killer. It doesn't matter if it replaces the Zvia or the Overlord piece. We would gain 5 weapon damage and of course 5 DTA. The 5 DTA is a little bit impactful in making sure that the second shot is enough for purples, because actually, if you're looking at just the raw stats, the second shot, if you're shooting 2 reds in a row, that does not work out. But then shooting 2, the second one being with DTA, does work out. Let's go actually hit over there. And I'm actually going to run a different weapon on in a second, which is the Diamondback. So if you're not wanting to use Determined, I can understand. There is, of course, the whole... debate in there on if it's intentional or not. It would be nice if the devs themselves came out and said, you know, it is or it isn't, or, you know, we're going to fix it or it's not. But in either case, it's been around for so long that it's part of the game. It's a fixture of the game. If you don't want to run that, you could run the 1886 with several different talents here. So what I would actually pick myself is Preservation, because Preservation, you're going for those headshots anyway. The headshots give 20% armor on kill. That would be my healing mechanic for this. Otherwise, you could either go Optimus, because here you're emptying out so fast that actually Optimus is a pretty good choice, and you are reaching the end of the magazine quite often. You would want to as well. One option as well actually is Steady-Handed, as it will even make it flatter, although not so much for this, but much more so for the Memento variant. And Ranger. Ranger is a very good one, and also Future Perfect. Future Perfect will not trigger or actually, Future Perfect will trigger, as that's what I was trying to say, will trigger its full overcharge, because we do have 3 skill tiers, as we have one from Memento, one from the Technician Specialization, and one from Brazos. So we are 3 skill tiers, and then we can go up to +3, and then get the 6, getting an overcharged shield, of course, and the overcharged Artificer hat. As yeah, shooting and playing is sometimes not great. Using the Diamondback, we now have the headshot, of course. So we're back in 2005 times. Although 2005, but let's say 2000. When did Determined come out? Let's say it's 2022, right? Where Determined did not exist, and we had to actually click heads. Now we have to click heads again. I do like the Diamondback. Diamondback actually is also a really good talent pick, because actually over all of those talents, I would pick the Diamondback. Mostly because as well, in this case, it has 9 shots, with Zvia helping it out there a little. With the reload, we're still reloading fast enough. That is an exceptionally nice reload. The marking of it acts as our spotting. As if I don't know where the enemy is, likely I will a second later when the Diamondback actually marks the enemy. Of course, this is substantially slower. No one will deny that, but also I like it quite a bit. And of course, I can, especially if it's just 1 or 2 enemies remaining, if it's a big pack, I shouldn't stand in front of all of them. If it's 1 or 2 enemies remaining, I can actually stand in front of them for a substantial time and actually get really close without being in severe danger. So I can actually get...
Target is nearby.
when the head is bigger, it is actually much easier to hit. And yeah, here, of course, all of the bounties kind of go into that area. And the play here is generally to jump around here. So with a lot of Memento builds, I would avoid going more, or for instance, if there was, there are 2 slots here where things can spawn, territory control can spawn there, and then usually down here there's also a public execution. I would generally avoid those, as this is the Hoarder's Horde, as I killed him earlier. I would generally avoid those, but I don't have to now. That's quite nice, actually, having a tech tank like, because to me, technically, this still isn't a tech tank. A tech tank is Technician with Artificer and a shield, and then Memento. Memento adds so much to the shield that makes the tank part of it actually, you know, tanky. But this isn't that technically, but it is it's close enough. And yeah, here actually, let's try it out. Can we one-shot this gal? Yes, we can. Especially, of course, with a Diamondback, we can actually. And with Diamondback, you can actually go a lot higher because of the crits happening as well. And also, it's amp on that first shot. So whenever it's marking an enemy, we're getting plus 20% on them. I'm not sure who is from the control or from the territory control and who is just a random patrol, but... And just the marks are kind of nice. It points you to the enemy, especially if they're just kind of hiding. You have those moments. Just you don't see where the last enemy is, like now. I don't see where he is. Oh, there he is. There's my boy.
Detected.
And one thing about also not having Determined, although I missed there, I could have actually hit the weak point there and blown it up and done a lot of damage. I'm actually gonna go and hide in the corner. My Artificer was just healed it. I stood there for way too long, like a deer in the headlights. But now my Artificer is back and is gonna heal my shield. And yeah, this is always the thing with some headhunters. Like, it's annoying to peek and try to shoot this guy. But and also for the last shot, because it doesn't matter, I'm not going to keep my headhunter to the next event. I'm just gonna, you can just body shot the last guy, because you will lose your headhunter fast traveling to another place. It doesn't get lost just by fast traveling, so if you just fast travel, that's fine. But generally, if you are fast traveling to somewhere else and then running for like 20 seconds, that's going to be your headhunter anyway. And yeah, we have had a smidgen of different factions. Let's actually, one faction we haven't had yet. Let's go against some hyenas. Let's just go here. Let's go murder some of those. And I do like this very much with the Diamondback. It is quickly becoming one of my preferred builds. And you don't, of course, if you're running the Diamondback main, you don't need that 1886. What I would recommend putting there is maybe just some form of shotgun or something that just hits hard, just to get something staggered off of you. If you're running in the same vein as with the when you're running the 1886, the diamond, you don't need these two weapons combined. If you're running the 1886, I would much rather have a Scorpio here as a secondary, just as a something's going wrong button. And in the inverse way as well, putting a shotgun in here, even though it's not getting bonused by other stuff, you can use it to crack helmets, of course, as well and such. And Brazen is so good. Actually, I'm curious. Yeah, it's around 4.4 million-ish, as I remember. So here with these rushers, I do need to get the helmet off, but that's not a big issue because I have the follow-up. They can hit me on my shield. I don't really care about that. And even though my aim isn't the greatest, I get by. And while Determined would empty this wave out instantly, basically, I like this play. And yeah, I'm not even going per se for the target that the Diamondback has marked outright. I'm gonna wait for my Artificer to be off cooldown again, so when I pull out my shield, it's gonna have a big charge again, and I'm just body shotting the last one.
Access key detected.
Well, not as fast as Determined, pretty enjoyable. Of course, going this route, the Diamondback has a little bit more damage because of its talent. So if you're going for its enemy, for the marked target, although of course you can't always go for the marked target, especially if it's marking the wrong enemy that isn't the red. So you would still want it to be this powerful, yeah, that works out the best, I feel. Still keeping it to this level, just so that even if you're not hitting the marked enemy, you can still one-shot them. Let's go back to for one last one, we'll go with the Determined. As of course, we need to kind of talk about the competitors to this as well. Hotshot is not to me really the competitor to this. That's much more for control points and such. This I would not take to control points outside of global events. Most of the global events will make this more than powerful enough for that. But it doesn't have the killing potential for the named, which is just annoying. You're going to lose your stack on them. Of course, you can get it back if you can put 2 more shots into them and get it back. But it is still frustrating. The big competitor to this, to me, is actually the Headhunter's Fury. And partially as well, the high-end Regulus Headhunter or Determined D50 Headhunter. But what this has... well, I like the Hunter's Fury Headhunter and also actually the D50 or the high-end Headhunter, both with Regulus. I don't like them much with Determined. I don't like the D50. It is very jumpy, even to the point that, for instance, when we're using it on a build like this that has 100 weapon handling, the way that stability works, it is the up and down recoil of a weapon. It is not the side to side. So even when we have, actually when we're holding the pistol, or what's our 101 stability? Yeah, we don't have any stability mods on it or anything. If I just hold the weapon up, so we just see what the effect of it is, it still jumps side to side. And that's because the up and down recoil is getting compensated, the side to side recoil isn't. So a D50 is just, when you're trying to just land it again on target again and again, it is actually quite annoying, and I just dislike the weapon. The Regulus is actually much better. Also, the Regulus has a different marker where it has a dot in the middle, and you'd be surprised how much of a difference that makes. Because look at how big this thing stays still with that, with the numbers that we have. The difference with that to this is immense. Now, of course, especially against the Headhunter, the Hunter's Fury Headhunter, we are losing the effects of Hunter's Fury. So you would get armor and kill, you would get the disorient on enemies. But on the other hand, we do get to have an pronounceable stronger shield just because we can put Picaras into here without that much issue. Now, of course, with a pistol, you can go Dodge City, so there's effects there. It isn't to me that this is a replacement for that build. That build to me is still here. This one is set up with 5 pieces, so I can either put the backpack into the here or the Dodge City. This one to me lives actually more amongst the tech tanks as a build, although this one's between the Headhunters as well here. I want to kind of have both. They're different things for different times. And I really enjoy this as well because you don't really need to be within that 15 meters. With the Hunter's Fury, you do kind of want to be close. With this as well, generally, as you have seen me play here, I am pretty close to the enemy, but I don't need to be. And sometimes when you're fighting something and another patrol joins and stuff, having to still push in can get you killed. If you play this one smartly, which I mean, yeah, I still die a bunch with this thing, so I don't always play it smartly. If you play this smartly, you should be able to get by without ever dying, really, because whenever you die, it really has to be your fault. Sometimes with the Hunter's Fury, you kind of get caught up in it that you have to push in, because if you don't have the Hunter's Fury buff up, it actually struggles with even killing the most simple things until it gets going. And even then, yeah, it falls below that if you have multiple shots outside of Hunter's Fury range against, for instance, trying to get an elite LMG. With this, I can kind of make mistakes like that, where I miss a shot or two and not really have to struggle. And I'm kind of just waiting for the enemy to come to me and just dealing with them as they come. And the nice thing about this one as well is the reload isn't that bad, so you can actually just stand in front of enemies and just take the reload. I'm just gonna kill the owner there before the before the thing reaches me. And that's why I've been really enjoying this, and that's why I also kind of wanted to share it quickly, because this is actually likely the build that has that I've run the least or has existed the least before I have made a build showcase out of it. In this case, yeah, this build was not available before Zvia, so it has basically been around for available for 2 weeks, or I put it together like a week ago. But the concept of the high end trying to get with a high end, trying to make a tech tank rifle thing has been in my mind for quite a while, and Zvia has made that possible. So let's take this to its conclusion, and we'll have our final thoughts there. And to go into a conclusion, I've been very much enjoying these builds. I've actually been anticipating being able to make these kinds of builds. As I have tried, as I said throughout this video, to make them in the past, and we were missing bonuses for them. In this case, with the coming of Zvia and its 20 rifle damage, that has basically solved that issue, and we get to have what are, in this case, for instance, full tech tanks, although not full tech tanks, because a full tech tank would have 6 skill tier shield, but effectively tech tanks with the Memento as well. And with enough bonuses to make an 1886 work, no other weapon would really work in this place without, from the rifle set, of course, outside of that and the Diamondback, which is derived from it. And then especially as well having this Memento variant, while I really like it, I've actually been enjoying the Ninjabike variant, as it is actually pretty easy to interchange between them. So for instance, here on my main account, I have the ability to go back and throw, and I have the Ninjabike at the ready, and just one Overlord piece to replace that one Brazos piece. And this is, in effect, the same build as the other one, just these two are swapped in place. Having both of those options on a character is actually very nice, and I quite enjoy it. And that's mostly because as well, the Ninjabike one lets me use some other zones, especially for instance in New York, which we didn't visit today, but for instance in New York, having the ability to go to the safe houses and Haven is actually really important for running around and doing activities, because there aren't that many fast travel points. Within DC, there are a lot more, because there's just a lot more missions there. And you can actually make really effective use of a Memento, but in New York, it ends up being a nuisance, because every time you go to a safe house, you lose the buffs from it. And while its buffs are really great, in this case, this having the ulterior thing of having a lot of weapon handling works really well for me. And yeah, again, to reiterate, it isn't really that new player friendly, especially needing basically maxed out stats, as everything, especially the headshots and such, need to be maxed out. The weapon damages need to be maxed out. If the weapon handlings aren't maxed out, that's not a big issue. Then you have the option of, especially with this Ninjabike version, you could actually go with a chain killer if you don't have the high grading, or if you're missing some stats. You don't need that high of a grading, but you do need it to be not an ungraded weapon, as is in that case. You need it to be at least grade 5 with the chain killer here. Although with the chain killer, you're dropping off, of course, a lot of stats in the weapon handling department. And it's not adding in that much over going the Zvia route, as when you go the Zvia route, and you can get up to that 10 grades, which isn't that hard. I would say most players could be able to get to at least grade 10 in not that much time invested. You don't need the 25 as I have here. You don't need 26 as is the new cap, but you do need 10 in effect. Having that is more than enough to get this build to work, and this has become my go-to now for just when I'm running around and want to do activities, as it can deal very well with 5 directives. It can be very effective and quick, especially with Determined there. And in comparison to some of its compatriots in, for instance, the Hotshots and the Hunter's Fury Headhunters and the high-end Headhunter with either Regulus or D50, also the Hunter's Fury with Headhunter with Regulus or D50. With Regulus, I do prefer them sometimes, but in general, running around, this can have a very powerful shield. Although, of course, with a pistol, you can go bulwark. But this setup also has a little bit more range than those because of the rifle. The rifle does have a limitation in having just 28 optimal range, as I just want to point that out, as I feel that is something that a lot of people miss out on. It is still limited a little bit in its range because of that, because 28 meters is the same as a FAMAS, for instance. The 1886 is not that kind of rifle. Only this and the MDR have this short ranges. All other rifles are 50 or 60 meters in effect for their optimal range. But extending, especially against the Hunter's Fury Headhunter, going from that 15-meter range to 28-meter effectively, and also actually if in further shots, as the drop-off is quite long range, it isn't a sharp drop-off. Yeah, you can reach out, especially once you're done with that first shot and the second shot being a red or a purple on the second shot. From that point on, you can actually be a little bit out of range because you don't drop off that severely in comparison to, for instance, especially something like a like a D50 that doesn't reach out that far, and the gear set as well in a Headhunter Sphere. So I feel this definitely deserves a place. I'm going to keep it. I've been really enjoying it. And that's why I also wanted to get this build showcase out pretty quickly, just to get the word out there. And hopefully some people want to try it out and will find it helpful. As I definitely think that these are very valuable builds to have. And I've already even, for instance, added one to my third account as well, because that's how much I enjoyed these. So yeah, thank you for joining me on this one. For my next video, we'll be going into for no particular reason, as we haven't had many of those recently. And we'll go into what are some of the text in the game that are incorrect, as we'll go over in-game text and which ones are wrong, as for instance, a lot of the talents are still misnamed, although I shouldn't say a lot. It has been severely reduced over time. And at this point, it is actually a very short list. But also there is some text that is wrong for the loading screens, as we'll go over those, and also just some random other miscellaneous stuff. So yeah, I hope you join me for those, and also after that I will make a video about seasonal characters and my feelings on them, and somewhat my feelings more so on the community and how they reacted to it. As yeah, so many people ask my opinion on it that I'm like, I'll just make a video and answer it that way. So I hope you join me for those. As always, if you enjoyed this video, please do all of the algorithm stuff down below, and that is always very much appreciated. And have a good night.